Welcome to the first Racer X Reaction Roundtable. My name is Donnie Southers. Joining me is online content editor Kellen Brauer. We just had the Ken Roczen 2 HEP announcement officially come to the table. We have a press release. So, Kellen, do you want to read the press release for us?
Yeah, so it says HEP Motorsports Inc.'s Ken Roczen for 2023. HEP Motorsports is thrilled to announce that the team has signed Ken Roczen as its premier rider for the 2023 season. Former AMA Motocross champion Roczen will be aboard the Suzuki RMZ 450. Roczen, who won his most recent championship on a Suzuki, will be reunited with the brand and bring his exciting style, determination, and grit back to the RM Army. Ken Roczen will compete in the upcoming 2023 Supercross and Motocross Championship Series, which is set to start on January 7th at Anaheim Stadium. Roczen says, quote, "I am beyond excited to reconnect with Suzuki for the third time in my career. We've had a lot of success in the past, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish together in our future. I have a lot of confidence in Suzuki and the HEP Motorsports program, and I'm excited to finally get the new year going with a fresh start. From the moment I got on the bike, I felt right at home. It has been a welcome surprise how quickly I've adapted to the bike and the team. We will be ready to go racing come January 7th. HEP Motorsports will debut the complete team lineup at round one of the 2023 Supercross Championship on January 7th, 2023 at Angel Stadium of Anaheim.
So, as somebody that obviously started as a fan, much like myself, and has transitioned into media, what excites you the most about this Ken to Suzuki deal?
I would say for me, I'm most excited really for Suzuki. HEP has slowly progressed into a really like full-fledged factory Suzuki program at this point in time, but they hadn't had, I think, what was a marquee name or a marquee rider to really lead that program yet. So for them to bring Ken Roczen on board is huge, not only for them as a team, but obviously Suzuki as the brand, because Suzuki's, we've documented how many struggles they've been having the last few years with financials, side of it. They pulled out of MotoGP most recently, and it's almost been looking like Suzuki has just kind of been fading back out of the sport in a sense. We have so many manufacturers getting involved with the Austrian brands. We probably have some more manufacturers coming down the road with Beta and some, other news coming, I'm sure. But with Suzuki, it seemed like it was one of those big four Japanese bike manufacturers that was just going to kind of fade away. So for them to have a marquee guy back on their brand and kind of able to show what they're able to do again, I think is huge to maybe reignite that flame for either them in Japan or maybe on the American side for Suzuki to put more funding, put more effort into the program, and maybe this keeps them rolling along for a lot longer than maybe we suspected they would.
It's a good point. A lot of people have thrown around the notion that Suzuki is the one that actually stepped up to get this deal done. Is that rooted in fact at all, or was it more the HEP's private sponsors that ultimately got this deal done?
So from what I've been hearing, I think that this was more a outside sponsorship helping this happen kind of situation. Obviously, Twisted Tea Suzuki brought on Progressive Insurance as a huge sponsor backing their program this year. They already had Progressive before, but I think that Progressive has stepped up in some shape or form to add a little bit more monetary value to that program. And I'm sure when they were working through the details of signing Ken Roczen and they go to Progressive and say, "Hey, we're trying to sign this athlete. This is what we think he can do. Is there anything you can do to help us?" That maybe the floodgates opened a little bit more in terms of the financials there. So I don't know that Suzuki made a significant contribution. I think this was more the outside sponsors stepping up. Obviously, Roczen brings his own deals with him as well. So he's going to have Red Bull, by the sounds of it, still Fox backing him with the gear and everything like that. So I think it was more of like a whole everything coming together to make it happen for Kenny to get to this point and not necessarily one big financial push from any one specific source. But I don't necessarily think Suzuki was that huge driving force to get him.
So now that we finally have a top tier talent on the newest rendition of the RMZ, where do you think Roczen slots in going into A1?
It's a really interesting question because, past history suggests that maybe people that have gone to Suzuki have struggled in, maybe the last 4 or 5 years. They've tried to develop the bike a little bit from that chassis that Roczen was racing on in 2016, but it hasn't been a lot of major changes. But I do think that there's not enough credit given to what that bike was and what it still is. It was arguably one of the best machines in the 2010s, so much so that it attracted, James Stewart to go there. It attracted Ken Roczen to leave a factory KTM, which was clearly on the rise at that time. to go to a Suzuki and win on it. So I don't think that it's a bike that is really going to hamper him all that much in that regard. I think you can definitely count on the fact that Roczen is still going to be right near the front in some shape or form. I do think that he can still win on that machine. I don't know that that necessarily means that he is going to be better in terms of a championship run than he was on a Honda. But I think speed wise, we're not going to see too much deterrence from that. I really do think that Kenny's going to be almost the same old Kenny, and maybe getting back on a Suzuki for him is kind of, brings back some of those good vibes and good memories of when he was winning consistently and pushes him into a different zone that he wasn't on the Honda.
How do you think the rest of the gate sees this move? Does Ken benefit a bit here with other teams and riders kind of, looking at the older technology of the RMZ and underestimating him and that bike?
I mean, that's also a good question. I don't really know that the other riders are going to look at Kenny any less. I think they're still going to know that what he has in him is something that is going to be hard to challenge, hard to beat. What I'm most curious to see about with this, and I think that riders may react to this, is Kenny, historically has been pretty good at starts, and the Suzuki hasn't gotten a ton of hole shots, but Bogle did rip a couple last year. And I think if we see Kenny start ripping hole shots consistently on that bike, then I don't think anything changes. I think everyone still looks at Kenny as a threat, and I think if he starts getting out front and challenging those guys early on in the season, I think they'll just say it's like any other bike that he would have been on, and he's still going to be a threat for them.
It's a great point. The last time we saw Ken on the Suzuki, obviously, was in 2016. He finished second indoors to Ryan Dungey and then won the outdoor title. Pretty dominant season. His health has been a struggle since then, but while he was healthy, he was top four in every single series that he completed. How do you think he fares this year? Do you think top four is still a reasonable expectation for him if he can stay healthy?
I do, and I think that's rooted in the fact that if the same Kenny that has good starts and kind of starts the season strong is still the same Kenny that we've seen every other year before this. I think that what he does that other riders may struggle with is he puts himself in a championship fight from the get-go almost every year. And because of that, it maybe looks bad because he starts in first or second and ends up fourth in the championship, for example. But the reality is he's in the championship fight the whole time. It's not like he starts A1 and 10th and has to fight his way up there. So I kind of see the same thing. I really do think that he's a top five championship caliber guy. I don't think that the bike really hampers him that much off of that level. We'll see testing wise, I think is the biggest problem. He's been riding so many different bikes. They say he's going to be ready to go on this machine, but if he's a little bit off, like they're still making adjustments by the time we go east. I could see that hampering him more than anything. Where you see more of these guys that have had a couple years on their bikes to develop it and get ready. That would maybe push him outside of the top five in terms of a championship picture, but just on paper right now, I don't think I could put him outside of my top five.
Um, this team was founded just 5 years ago around a group of kind of misfit privateers with no title sponsor, and now they have two massive title sponsors from outside of the industry and a two-time 450 champion. How impressed should we be with what Dustin Pipes has been able to do over there at HEP?
Very impressed. I am personally very impressed as well. I don't you don't see a meteoric rise very often of a satellite program. I think it takes like almost steps every single step of the way to get there. And not to say that the athletes that they had coming into this year were not great. Obviously Brandon Hartranft just getting hurt is a bummer. We think maybe Kyle Chisholm's going to be on that program as well, and they've had Justin Bogle and other fairly marquee names in the past year or two. But this is a massive step. This is taking almost two steps at once to get to this level, and I think that they deserve a lot of credit for not only stepping out to that realm to court Kenny to say, hey, come try our bike, but also giving him what apparently seems to be the resources that he felt were enough to make him comfortable and make him satisfied that he can get on this bike and still win. I think that goes to show that that program is in a much better spot than maybe from the outside perspective a lot of people give them credit for.
I agree. It's definitely been very impressive. I remember when they announced the team and just kind of being like, oh, huh, cool. That's good that those guys have some support. And now, yeah,
Right.
we're literally top tier. Final question. Does Ken win multiple main events and or motos on this bike in 2023?
I will say yes, but I hesitate to say that it's a resounding yes on the multiple wins just because we saw last year with Honda, he came out and he says he wasn't even ready and he won the first round of the year. And then after that, it kind of snowballed downhill from there. If he can come into this year and feel even a fraction better, then yeah, I think multiple main events are on the table. Whatever he was struggling with last year, mentally, physically on the bike, whatever it was, if that's washed away and he feels like he's got this fresh start, then 100% multiple wins are on the table. But it's so up in the air at the moment because he hasn't had much time on this bike. We're going to almost need to see the first 3 rounds, I think, to give a real tell of how he feels on this machine, how well the testing has gone before I write it home that he's winning multiple races. But I do say that he can win, and I do think he can win multiple main events if everything's clicking.
Good deal. It'll be exciting to watch. Obviously, this headline's kind of dominated going into the 2023 season, but now it's time we can finally get moving on and checking on the other guys and see how that is. Thanks so much for joining me, Kellen. We'll look forward to hearing from you throughout the season.
It's a pleasure. And finally, Kenny has signed a deal.
Yes, it's done. Take care. That's all for this edition of RacerX Rapid News presented by Fly Racing. Be sure to visit racerxonline.com for all your motocross and supercross news.